Alright, so I watched an anime recently called The Dark Gathering. I highly recommend this anime to adults, reason being the extremely messed up subject matter. Might not be the most mature story, but viewer discretion is definitely advised. What is it about? The world is inhabited by spirits. They surround us, move around and live their own lives, in a way. However, at times malice, anger and other strong emotions might bind them and cause complications. A powerful curse might manifest if misery was left to fester, and it's anyone's guess how many living beings it can take with it. The story itself focuses on a generic anime guy, his childhood friend and little girl who is, weird. Let's go with that. They go around unraveling these curses, sometimes utilizing them in something similar to a messed up version of Pokemon. It's all good fun. What did I enjoy? Okay, first and most importantly the characters, and this is more so than the subject of or the story as a whole. I've seen these characters countless times before, but they are specifically utilized in the story in such a way that I enjoyed them immensely. So I will spell out some spoilers, but I don't believe it ruins the experience to know them. Keitaro is a generic anime protagonist and essentially a magnet for trouble. Spirits are drawn to him and he is constantly having troubles because of it. Yayoi is the opposite, in that spirits seem to be terrified of her, which is somewhat amusing for a little girl. She's this robotic kind of character. And then there's Eiko, the nice, friendly and sociable childhood friend. However, they are all insane. Fear and death-defying drives them. And the way they are written, it's like writers using the cliches and turning them on their heads. I adore the relationship Eiko and Keitaro have. It's so delightfully freaky. And I don't want to spoil it all by explaining, so I'll just say that this is the strongest part of the story for me. Next is the setting. I very much enjoyed the idea of a world of spirits being there, side by side, and sometimes it's ghosts crossing over, sometimes it's people, and sometimes it's in between. I just find the idea fascinating. And it's a bit embarrassing to admit, but as a kid I always wanted something like this to be true. Like, we are at all times are in this world full of strange and supernatural, and I got into Shaman King, thinking what if I just believe hard enough maybe I can also get a spirit body so we can kick ass together. Never happened, of course, but I never stopped wishing to believe. I think everyone has that part of them, but where they just want the supernatural to be real. All of us just want to believe, and this was the one for me. Another thing about it that I enjoy is that this world has a set of rules. So for example, the fact that the spirits can possess things, for example dolls, and if dolls are damaged then the spirit is damaged as well. Which is frequently utilized to bind them, control them and do all sorts of things. Everything runs on this sort of logic, which is sometimes even childish, but it all makes a strange amount of sense. I enjoy this sort of thing a lot. It reminds me of mythology a lot as well as superstition, this hearsay, which is never really written down and explained, but is just told through word of mouth and just carry over the generations of people. It's all fascinating and, again, love it stuff. Nothing beats old wives' tale. And I also enjoyed the spirit background. So, as it was established, the spirits aren't inherently good or evil. A lot of them are just everyday guys going about their business, most likely wandering around aimlessly. However, those who stick around are frequently doing so due to a grudge, or a curse, or some sort of reason that they have unfinished business. And each spirit in this story has their own, like for example a martyr. The soldier who took out countless soldiers defending his country, a hero, but it's not all rosy. After his death he was tortured by the spirits of those he felled and only sought release. So he's cursed to fight others, hoping to finally die, but he never manages to, unwillingly draining his opponents and always left standing in the end. Every spirit has a backstory like that, and I enjoyed how much love and care is put into writing every single one of those. But again, gotta remind that these are very messed up, especially when it came to the younger spirits. So, what did I dislike? Or flaws, because I didn't find anything personally wrong. Instead there are some objective flaws. So, for example, animation. Yayoi, whatever, little girl, is especially drawn in such a way that she is very creepy, which fits, yes, but then you might realize that frequently she has only one expression and doesn't really move that much. So a lot of the time she just stands there staring into the camera directly. I also dislike how basic her eye design is. The skulls are just a bit on the nose, but I did like how she looked overall though. Small and puffy, like a cute little penguin. But yeah, flaws. The actual fighting scenes are done in a lazy way. For example, frequently there's a still shot which zooms out a bit, or pans a little, or it's a quick number of jump cuts between zoom in on the attack, then zoom out of the actual action. So the details are very blurry. Actually, most of the things are animated like that. The whole anime series feels like it has a fairly low budget. Not that it can't do without it, but sometimes it feels downright lazy. And speaking of Keitaro, he looks like a generic protagonist from an early 2000 anime. I'm pretty sure I have seen him at least in 5 other anime series before. However, everyone else in the series is designed with a bit more modern approach. Eiko, for example, something about the size of her face, how big the hair is. It's just like Keitaro is stuck in some weird time capsule while the rest has moved on. God. Stupid cold, never going away. Okay, next is voice acting, and sound in general. I wonder if sound balancing had issues due to the amount of ear-gouging screaming, but overall level of audio seems lower quality than the anime is generally. It's like, to bring everything together, the loud parts had to be mixed with the quieter ones, so it all sounds a bit messy. Although I did enjoy how messed up the screams sounded. Well, messed up in a psychological kind of way, not actual software kind of way. So, it's very old-timey phone kind of sound. However, I also felt like Yoi was voiced not very well. Just like her design, she only has really one setting, quiet whispering. Which is actually pleasant, but it felt a little lazy here, because there were definitely moments where she should have been a bit more emotional. I feel like a voice actress can do better, but it's as if she was specifically told to only sound one way by the director. It's a little weird. Also, it becomes a little difficult to hear what she's actually saying because of a sound issue I mentioned. Overall, not a huge deal, but I'm learning Japanese, so whenever she spoke I tried a little extra hard to catch a word or two, and it was nigh on impossible to do so. It might be unimportant to others, of course, but to me it was pretty annoying. Also, I think pacing is another issue. So generally it was good where it needed to be good, but I felt like there was a lot of wasted time. For example, the beginning part of each episode is frequently a part of the last episode, so a recap. Okay, a lot of anime does that, but then there is also a bit with the narrator explaining the premise, which then goes into the intro, and then there could be a few more facts repeated about the stuff which the viewer remembers from the last episode. This can take over 5 minutes each episode. And then you add ending and snippets of the next episode, and that's nearly half of the episode is just reused footage. Can cut over 40 minutes of total airtime and lose nothing at all. And in time there is, I don't know how to explain it well, but it's about the moments dragging on. So usually there's a setup which explains where they're going, gives a bit of character banter, yada yada yada, then that is paced well. Then they arrive, and usually there's some repetition at this part, or explaining things which were already obvious. After which the pacing picks up, and even going a bit too fast at times. I assume to save budget, because this part needs good animation. And then there's a big important chunk with a generally paced enough, and finally the resolution. And the resolution frequently explains things which were already obvious, or it goes over the same, "Oh, I'm so glad you're okay," and yada yada yada. That drags on a ton. Feels extremely slow, and I felt like skipping the ending part so many times. And another thing to complain about the villains. Generally there were none. Spirits were spirits, but there's more. At one point other people who can interact with the spirit world show up, and they don't lift curses, just making things worse, and they're just not well written. They feel like lazy cop-outs, and I felt like the story largely gets worse whenever they show up. So yeah, that's definitely another flaw, and does not make me too excited about the future prospects for this show. So overall, I think it's a very interesting series, and I strongly recommend it. I also hope for a second season and more, but I'm afraid it might get worse as the more and more evil guys get shown. This anime is definitely at its strongest when it's just the main trio versus the evil spirits, and as they descend further into madness, it becomes a sight to behold.
仕返しだ。来いよ。
何やってんの、弥生ちゃん。ケイ君。